Okay, so this morning we're going to talk about installations. So that obviously becomes pretty important when we're dealing with backflow prevention. So that's what we'll be talking about. My name is Patrick Sylvester. I'm the business manager here. I've been working at USC since I started working here as a student, worked in the lab, was an engineer with a foundation for many years, and then went on to do the business aspect of things. So I'm still involved in a lot of the some of the technical stuff, but that's what I do right now is the business administration. So today we're going to talk about general installation guidelines. I'll just go over the general. This is what we normally like to see. We'll talk about the list because it specifically talks about installation and aspects of what should be used when and where. And we'll talk about some modifications and hydraulic changes that occur when a backflow preventer gets installed. So that is our agenda for the day. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them now, or we'll also have time at the end if you want to ask something there. But if I don't see you, hit the little raise hand button or something like that. Just wave in front of the camera or something so I can pay attention. So we're going to talk about the air gap, the reduced pressure principle assembly, and the double check valve assembly. Those are sort of thrown together because the installation, the physical installation aspects are the same. The PVBs, meaning both a pressure vacuum breaker and a spill resistant vacuum breaker, and the atmospheric vacuum breaker. A couple handouts. There's the one on the approval program, which also Daniel mentioned, then also installation guidelines, which is from the manual, chapter 8. And if you have a copy of the manual, which you should, there's a card that came in the shrink wrap that links to a website that has a lot of these documents just as Word files or PDF files that you can download and use however you want to use them. Memo regarding modifications is on our website, and that's also, I think Daniel's putting it in the shared links there.
Yeah, the documents are in the chat there now. Everyone should see those there.
Okay, so an air gap. This is from the manual, and this is looking at an air gap from using it as system protection, which is fairly unusual just because of some complications that come with it. But some of the things we look at, something that would certainly matter in any type of system protection is there should be no connections between the meter and the tank in this case. So between the service connection, or if there's a meter, from the meter and the source of backflow protection. So in this case, the air gap, there, you have to make sure there's no interconnections there. That's why it's normally as close as possible to the service connection. The elevation of the tank needs to be a high enough level to either gain the pressure, or you're going to need a booster pump. Sometimes I've seen situations where they have a tank on top of a building so that there's the air gap protection, and then the elevation of the tank allows for pressure to feed inside the building. That's great. There's some complications with that, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. If you don't have that elevation, you're going to need to have some sort of a booster pump or something to get the pressures there. And this is just talking about supports and distances and things. These are our recommendations. Something you'll see as we go through here, remember, these are recommendations. You may have specific requirements in your jurisdiction. Those are the things you need to follow. But from the foundation's point of view, these are things that we would recommend. Important thing to remember about an air gap is that an air gap is a physical separation from the supply line to the overflow rim of the receiving vessel of at least twice the diameter of the supply line, but never less than 1 inch. Meaning never less than 1 inch if the diameter is less than ½ an inch. You still have to have that 1 inch separation. So this is the minimum requirement. When we talk about the overflow rim, we're talking about where water floods out onto the surrounding ground. Okay, so if it keeps flooding, that should not be able to fill up and come back into the tank. This should be basically an endless supply of space for the water to go to. This is a air gap of about 3/4 of an inch, and as you can see, with a vacuum, strong enough vacuum there, it actually could siphon the water up off the surface here. And what happens is the air just starts moving very quickly into the pipe and it starts pulling the water with it. So that is why we have that minimum requirement of an air gap. Just because there is a physical separation, that doesn't mean it's enough to keep the water from backflowing into the supply line. So that's why we have that minimum separation for an air gap. You will find sometimes in some of the, especially in some of the larger, like maybe you have an 8-inch line, you really need a 16-inch air gap because the vacuum that would require to pull water up there would be, yeah, I'm not sure a perfect vacuum would even do that, but I very often see health departments allow a variance on large air gaps, especially like in a ditch irrigation system, something like that. But again, that's going to look at, you're going to look at getting a variance if you need something like that. Air gap can be used for health or non-health hazards and can be used to protect it against a direct or an indirect cross connection. I'm assuming most of you guys are fairly familiar with the basic backflow stuff. I recognize most of you, I think. So I think you guys have all had a training course of some sort, but a direct cross connection is when subject to back pressure or back siphonage, and a indirect cross connection is when subject to back siphonage only. Couple of problems with an air gap is one thing, the loss of system pressure, which I mentioned. You may need to have a booster pump installed if that's the case. So you lose system pressure, but you also lose quality control on the water. So once the water drops through an air gap into an open tank, and it's got to be, it can't be a pressurized tank or a cold tank, it has to be open, you lose control of the quality of that water. So, you know, those are concerns. Again, if it's a ditch irrigation system, who cares? That's great. Water drops into the ditch, seeps into the ground, irrigates the crops. I'm not concerned about the quality of the water once it comes out of the pipe. To use an air gap to provide water to a building that's used for, you know, whatever, an office building, is impractical, because not only do you lose system pressure, you know, maybe you can gain the pressure by putting the air gap on the roof, but then you lose control of the quality of the water. So then the water is really not potable. So then you got to either retreat the water or make it strictly an industrial line that you cannot use for potable purposes. So there's an impracticality to use air gap for anything, but it certainly has its uses, and it's very, very, very useful for the right purpose. So here you can see they have an air gap. They put a screen around here to keep critters out, but you know, that is not going to keep the quality of the water as it was when it was first supplied. So again, dust can get in here, bird droppings can get in here, smaller critters can get in there, all sorts of things can get in here and make this water non-potable. So that's the problem, one of the problems with an air gap. You know, again, for the right purpose, it's great. For the system protection, you know, for most cases, it's not necessarily a very practical use. It'll work, it protects the public water system, but it's not always practical. Here again, an air gap, yeah, and as you can barely see at the bottom here, it is actually open to the atmosphere. This is a common thing used to fill tanks, but again, the tanks are not necessarily tanker trucks that are used to maybe spread water over a construction site or something to water the ground down. But then again, that's not necessarily, you know, you're not concerned with the quality of the water once it gets in the tank. So then it's a great thing. It still protects the water supply, but you're not concerned with the quality of the water once it leaves the water line. For air gaps, we basically go by the ASME standard, American Society of Mechanical Engineering standard, A112.1.2 and A112.1.3. Those are the details of an air gap. They get into some other specifics about air gaps near sidewalls, etc. But that's where you can get all the information on more specific details on an air gap. So looking at some general installation guidelines for a double check and an RP. First of all, double check can only be used for non-health hazards. That's important to know. Direct and indirect cross connections fine, but only a non-health hazards. Whereas an RP can be used for a health hazard or a non-health hazard and a direct or indirect cross connection. So those are the differences between a double check and an RP. Other than that, you're going to find installation requirements pretty much the same. Couple things we look at, we'll talk about this more in detail later. A minimum of 12 inches above grade, maximum of 36 inches above grade. That's for system protection. Internally, you'd sort of go with the plumbing code, which is typically no more than 5 feet above grade. You have to have accessibility for testing and repair, weather and vandalism protection if necessary, and adequate drainage if you have some sort of weather or vandalism protection. Should only be installed in the orientation in which they were approved. That is very important. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the list. That if an assembly is approved for horizontal orientation, that's horizontal orientation. Vertical up, vertical down. Some assemblies have a vertical up inlet, and a horizontal body, and a vertical up downlet. I can't really squishy this that much, but you get the idea. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the list, the very specifics. Another important thing is that also means you cannot take an assembly, and this is a horizontal assembly, but you cannot take it and rotate it on its axis. And we're very picky about this stuff because when we tested the assemblies in our lab and in the field, we tested them in the orientation that's shown on the list. So we don't know what's going to happen if you take this assembly and rotate it on its side. So orientation is very important. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the list. So some of the basic things, a protective enclosure. You may need a protective enclosure. Those are all, everyone here is from California, I think, right? No, Christy, where are you from? You're muted, but that's okay.
Texas.
Texas, in a warm part of Texas?
Yes, I'm warm.
Okay, well then that's okay for you too. Yeah, so freezing may not be a problem. If you're up in the mountains here in Southern California, that could be a problem. If you're in other parts of California, it could be a problem. But if you're here down in the sea level area, that's typically not a problem. But in other parts of the country, certainly freezing is a big issue. One of the important things is to make sure if you have a protective enclosure that you have adequate drainage. This is just for protection. We don't want people to go in and damage the assembly or to steal the assembly. I always think it's funny because I think for the most part, most people, you probably experienced this before you're involved in backflow. Most people don't see backflow preventers because they're invisible to people that don't know what they are. And once you know what they are, then you see them. The problem is sometimes people gain that vision of seeing a backflow preventer when they realize they can nab it and sell it for scrap brass, and that has sometimes with some of the smaller assemblies that are brass, and that has become a problem. So in certain areas, you'll find that you'll have some sort of vandalism protection. Also, you have protection for to protect the assemblies from injury, damage. You can see here they have these posts. You guys have seen these around probably fire hydrants and things so that someone doesn't back into the assembly and damage it, knock it. Not only that, the assembly's upside down, so that's not good. But here they've got these posts here for protection. This backflow preventer here had these posts here for protection, which is really good because someone, I don't even know how this happened, but somehow this car backed up over the posts or was dropped from a helicopter. I don't know how this got here, but the posts are actually very helpful. In this case, they protected the backflow preventer. This is protecting the backflow preventer from damage. So you may want to protect it from damage. You may need to protect it from theft, or you may need to protect it from weather conditions. Here's an enclosure. And you can see here, this is one of the tests we do for enclosures. We'll do testing. ASSC has a standard for enclosures. And there's several things involved. It has to be at a certain temperature for so many hours, and the backflow preventer has to still operate. And when we do that, we actually go to a big facility that actually tests satellites and drops it down to super cold temperatures. And then we make sure that water can continue to run through the assembly. But another thing we do is we make sure that it can handle a certain amount of discharge, that the enclosure can handle the discharge that it needs to handle in case that relief valve opens up. So that is that's something that's very important if you put the assembly in an enclosure. Again, this is for freeze protection. Those that are just like the one with the wire, you typically don't have a problem with the discharge of water because it's open anyway. The water will just flow through the wires. That's not a problem. But for freeze protection, it needs to be better insulated. So it's usually got some sort of method of allowing the water to escape and hopefully not allowing too much of the heat to escape.